Interreligious dialogue has increasingly become buried under a wave of intolerance here in Europe and of wars of extremism, particularly in the Middle East and Africa. Now, a new study here at this EPP-sponsored Congress reveals that nearly half of the world's countries have experienced or are experiencing significant declines in religious freedoms. The EPP Group's 17th annual Interreligious Dialogue brought together religious leaders, policymakers, and eyewitnesses to recent religious wars. Calls for a new religious literacy among Europe's policymakers, citizens, and media, as well as the threat posed by Islamic State, Boko Haram, and other extremist terror groups, were forcefully addressed. Peter Sefton-Williams, editor-in-chief of the Worldwide Religious Freedom Report in 2014, was blunt. 81 countries, more than 40% of the world's total, he said, were restricting freedom of religious belief and choice.
The religiously inspired violence and a lack of religious freedom and persecution in the last 2 years has been getting gravely worse. And although I'm not a politician and I can't offer the answers, that this is a matter which needs to be taken much more seriously. Within the Christian churches and Jewish groups and other religious groups, they have got to speak more clearly and with more force and with one voice against religious violence.
At the end of a recent visit to Turkey, Pope Francis called on Muslim leaders to speak out very clearly against violence in the name of religion. Christians reportedly remain the most persecuted religious group, due in part to their sheer numbers and wide geographical spread. Manfred Weber, chairman of the EPP Group, said European Christians must not forget that the right to celebrate Christmas is not universally respected.
This topic of radicalization moves us, especially now when we look to the Middle East, and is definitely a political task for us. I may justifiably speak from the Christian democratic point of view when talking about persecution of Christians, which from the sheer numbers of persecuted people represents the largest number. And then there are the many other religious communities which are suffering from persecution today.
Maria Gabriel, vice chair of the EPP Group for the Mediterranean region, said European values needed to be upheld in the face of such violence.
For the EPP Group and the European Union, it's vital to consider today the dangers represented by the Islamic State in all its dimensions. They represent a threat to our values, a threat to peace. Our position today is to prepare ourselves for greater action, but mainly to protect minorities, including Christian minorities, in the name of our values.
Orthodox Metropolitan Emmanuel of France concluded that religious leaders have to go back to basics. Millions of people in Iraq and Syria, he said, are being driven out of their homes. Most are never going back.
Definitely, religious communities' persecution is not something new in history. We had it already in the Old Testament, and we have it throughout the centuries and even today. The message of the religion is to approach the other with compassion, with love, and not with fear, rejection, and war.
Experts say religious freedom has come under extreme and existential threat through persecution. None more so in 2014 than for the Christian faith in the Middle East. Restoring that freedom, a freedom of choice, lies with the religious communities themselves and not with the armies of so-called holy war. Find out more about the largest political force in Parliament by going to eppgroup.eu. Thanks for looking in, and enjoy an uplifting and safe holiday season wherever you are spending it.